G'day mate, 40 here. Well might you ask, 40, where art thou? And the answer is, I am where the streets have no name. I can't take my eyes off of you. Pet Shop Boys. Where the streets have no name. Can't take my eyes off of you. I go there with you. Where the streets have no name. How glorious is this country we're living in, February 26, 2025, where the President of the United States can post an AI-generated video about Gaza depicting himself dancing with a scantily clad woman and hanging out on the beach with Bibi Netanyahu and Elon Musk eating hummus and a bunch of bearded men belly dancing on the beach and a giant gold statue of Trump. Oh, how glorious are these days. Trump in his live press is just hilarious. When he signs the bill taking away security clearance from an elite Washington, D.C. law firm that did work pro bono for Jack Smith. And when a female reporter wants to ask him about Europe, he says, hang on a minute, I just want to bask in this for a little while. And then the pen that he used to sign the executive order, he says, why don't you give this to Jack Smith? So there's a major Supreme Court case this week about a woman who is suing on the basis of straight discrimination, that she was not advanced in her career because the direct supervisor was gay and apparently wanted to promote gays. And one striking thing about news media coverage of this story is how they bent over backwards to try to make the story as boring as possible. So one way that the mainstream media tries to carry out its left-wing agenda is by making stories that play favorably for left-wing causes as exciting and monumental as possible, and then stories that play well for right-wing interests, they try to make them as mind-numbing and as boring as possible. Because we all have a visceral reaction, and often there's much more wisdom in how our body responds to the news than how our mind responds. So if you try to fight your way through mainstream media coverage of this straight discrimination case, right, your body will just tune out, right? You'll start to get a headache. You'll struggle to maintain interest because the Washington Post and Reuters, they try to frame things to make the story as dull as possible, as mind-numbing as possible, to just encourage you to tune out as quickly as possible, as opposed to a story that suits left-wing causes about how awful white people are and straight people are and Christians are. Many such cases, yes. So gays will not reproduce through normal male-female acts of conception, but they will further their own cause, like all groups, by what's called in biology niche construction. Right? Every living thing tries to create an environment around it most conducive for its thriving. Gays do it, straights do it, whites do it, blacks do it, Jews do it, Christians do it, Muslims do it, liberals do it, conservatives do it. Every group strives to create the world around it, tries to create its environment, tries to adapt and shift its niche to be more aligned with its own group interests. So pond scum does it, frogs do it, beavers do it, birds do it, bees do it. Why can't we do it? Let's do it. Let's engage in niche construction. And so there's never been a country, to my knowledge, where Jews have reached 5% or more of the population, and it hasn't generated tremendous internal divisions, because when you got a strongly identifying in-group that reaches 5% of your general population, right, they can usually start significantly building out their niche construction. They can start building out their own communities. They can dominate and run their own local communities in their own interest, and that's going to differ by group, right? When you have Asian Americans who have power at a school board, right, they're very likely to create a different type of schooling than if it's just white people who run the school board, or black people, or Latino, right? Asians have a life trajectory and certain tendencies and create distinctive communities, just like all groups, right? Irish create distinct communities. Spanish immigrants create distinct communities. Mexican immigrants create distinct communities. And part of creating a community is creating an educational system, a public education system, private education system that is best suited for meeting the needs of your group. So some groups will want to emphasize practical education, so everybody has the opportunity to learn a trade. Other people will want to emphasize the ability to score well in civil service exams so that they can go to work for the government. Other people will want a strong science and math curricula, so that groups who are above average in spatial and IQ and math IQ, right, can play to their strengths. We all tend to do what we do best, right? I gab, I talk, I shoot from the hip, I knit natter away, right? I'm not huge in the visual spatial IQ. I don't have any discernible drawing or physical arts gifts. My gift is an above average verbal IQ. So I preferred that schooling that played to that advantage that I have. All right, you wouldn't want me doing air traffic control. Right, we saw that awful incident in Chicago where a Southwest plane was landing and a private plane ignored air traffic control and motored out in front of the landing Southwest plane. And luckily, the Southwest pilot, with his best Chuck Yeager impression, just took off again immediately after landing, and said, "What was that?" Because a small commuter plane had ignored air traffic control. But anyway, I'm not the type of bloke that you'd want operating air traffic control. Right? You don't want me checking the engines before the plane takes off. On the other hand, all right, there are certain tasks that I may well be 1% at, top 1%. So Christopher Caldwell, in a column for Barry Weiss's Free Press, about a week into this new Trump administration, said the most significant thing that Trump has done is issue executive orders killing affirmative action and DEI programs. And the number one reason the businesses have pushed DEI programs and all sorts of training related to the joys of diversity is because it reduced their liability. All right, it was a way of getting the government off their back, reducing the chances of litigation aimed at their business. It wasn't because of ideological commitment to DEI. Business is overwhelmingly going to act in the direction of its own interests, whether that interest is in reducing liability and thus reducing potential downside, or earning profits. So businesses overwhelmingly are cutting out DEI and affirmative action programs in response to the new set of incentives that this Trump administration has created. And if this case of straight discrimination is moved forward by the U.S. Supreme Court, right, we could have a tidal wave of straight discrimination cases, white discrimination cases, male discrimination cases, because it has been de jure the law of the land that it's a good thing to discriminate against straight people, white people, and men over the past 55 years to keep left-wing litigation off your back. And there's nothing shocking or surprising that a group will want to construct a niche most aligned with its own interests, right? Gays do it, straights do it, whites do it, blacks do it. We all try niche construction. We all try to build out a world around us that is most conducive for our thriving, for our groups thriving, for reproducing people like ourselves. And there are certain groups who occupy disproportionate numbers in government employment. And we had an article, I think, from NPR saying that the black middle class is going to be destroyed by Trump's campaign against affirmative action and DEI and cutting waste and fraud in government is going to destroy the black middle class. So essentially it's arguing that much of the black middle class is based on affirmative action. And so a world without affirmative action is going to look significantly different, just like a world with Ozempic and these other weight loss drugs that have proved to be incredibly effective, right? It's going to rejigger the economy. It's going to rejigger the lives of millions of Americans. They're going to feel differently about themselves. They're going to engage in different pursuits. And Trump's campaign against DEI and affirmative action is broadly popular. Affirmative action has never been popular. So this isn't just some interruption. Right, this is likely to be a change in the way the United States operates that should be permanent going forward. Because it's popular. And if you want to stand up for DEI and affirmative action, right, you can have 80% of Americans who are opposed to you, right? That's not a formula for winning in politics, winning in business, winning in life. And among the smarter things that Donald Trump is doing in this new administration is he is focusing on those policies that have broad popular support. And these cuts to government spending are not going to affect all groups equally, all right? It will be those groups that have most benefited from affirmative action who will be the most hurt. But we should get huge productivity gains from removing affirmative action, and gains in morale, social cohesion, social trust, just happiness levels should increase, and there will be more trust between fellow Americans when affirmative action has less and less say in how business and government operates. And higher government productivity means superior government services at a lower price. Right? Most Americans will be in favor of that. So for all the chaos that's going on with DOGE, right, if the end result is improved government services at a lower cost, right, that will be broadly popular. That should be a winning formula going forward. And other countries around the world will be likely to imitate it because it will make America more productive. It will improve America's financial standing, make Americans more cohesive, trusting, effective, productive. There will be economic, social, cultural, physiological, psychological benefits. And a similar approach will go forward to other advanced economies. And America is the world leader in culture, economics, the military. And if what DOGE is doing proves successful in the United States, particularly if Americans get a DOGE dividend check, right, how will other advanced economies resist that? Diversity has been so wonderful for straight white males, such a great idea for white men to do this to themselves, says the chat. The Great Society was meant to be a big government welfare job program for white men. It was said so at the time. That's why Democrats say it is racist to cut government spending and government jobs. The Supreme Court ruling that outlawed IQ tests for jobs needs to be overruled by the Supreme Court soon. Right, IQ tests will make it easier to determine who would be able to do a job. Absolutely. Right, this costs tens of billions of dollars a year in productivity and efficiency and wise hiring practices.